Welcome to the Mild Exaggeration podcast, where we talk about nothing and everything all at once. With your host, Stephanie.
Angie.
And Mandy. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday for our latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Mild Exaggeration podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the birth of the mild exaggeration. What inspired you to start the mild exaggeration, and what unique perspective do you bring to our listeners?
I guess when it comes to what inspired me was just really connecting with others who have similar interests. Also, I always wanted to build like a fan base. And I guess like when it comes to the unique perspectives, I really don't know about that one. I have to kind of think on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay.
That makes sense. I think I feel a lot of the same way. I think what inspired me to want to do it is, for one, it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy conversation and listening to other people's perspectives on not only reading books, but many different other aspects of life. And again, feeling less alone and learning to laugh throughout experiences.
And what kind of unique perspective do you bring to the listeners?
Well, like I was saying in the beginning, I don't know exactly what would make it unique, but it's unique to me because I enjoy it.
Yeah. I feel like the reason I wanted to start like the Mild Exaggeration podcast, it was something that I wanted to do for a really long time. I feel like I've always had an obsession with content creating. And as we know, it's like I definitely have OCD, but I feel like content creating is something that I always circle back to. So it's never like one of those things where I get obsessed with it and then I'm done. It's like something that I wanted to do for a long time, because I feel like it allows you to, well, express yourself, connect with other people, and still be able to take care of my children, do the things that I have to do as a parent. And then I feel like something you guys didn't think about, our unique perspective that we bring to the listeners, is that our personalities are quite different.
Well, yeah, I agree. That's what I was saying, like hearing everybody's perspective, especially when we're doing similarly, I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The same things, whether it's the book, whether it's being a mom, daily life, we all have similar things, but different perspectives.
Honestly, I guess if you think about that though, guys, that gives everybody an opportunity to see from 3 different perspectives of one situation.
Yeah, and I like that.
Because I feel like I'm a little bit more, I guess we can say, bossy. Mandy is a little bit more emotional.
Definitely.
And I feel like Stephanie's definitely like that middle ground who helps like calms the water after the storm. I feel like Stephanie keeps us grounded. So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
I think so. And, when it comes to the whole question of what's unique about our perspective, I do have to say, like you mentioned, our personalities, because we are so different, but in a lot of ways we are similar.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm excited to see where this leads us to, and to finally build up, I don't know what we would call them, but I guess our listeners.
Community?
Yeah. Sure. Family.
Yeah, could be a family.
Speaking of family, for those of you who don't know, we are family. Angie is my older sister, and Stephanie is our first cousin. For those of you who are wondering what our relationship is to one another.
I guess a good question I have is, how did we land on the name of the Mild Exaggeration?
Well, I guess for me, what it represents, and I'd like to hear your guys' opinion because we obviously wrote down a few names and end up choosing the mild exaggeration. But
Mhm.
for me, I just feel like when we rant or whatever it is we're going through, we tend to over exaggerate, especially the behavior of our children, things with our husbands, their behavior when everybody's going through it. But we definitely exaggerate it to a point where it becomes humorous. So that's
Yeah.
how it relates to me. So like we're exaggerating, but it's just mildly. What about you, Angie?
I totally agree. I feel like when we came up with that name, I feel like the vote really it was like a no-brainer to vote on this
It was
name
just like, that's the name.
Yeah,
because I know like I definitely mildly exaggerate all my
everything.
situations. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or we'll be like texting each other about something that happened and just kind of feeling so overwhelmed. And then we'll just be like, oh, well, I'll be fine.
yeah. Like what you got? Then send the random picture of what we're eating for lunch.
Right. It's just who we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. So do you agree to that, Steph? That
I do. It's
so
just
we all kind of
who we
picked
are.
that name without actually, because this is actually the first time we're talking about what it meant to us, because only thing we did was, yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we never discussed why. So this is the first time. So it's kind of refreshing to know that we all chose that name for the exact same reason, which
I mean, honestly, when we picked the name of the podcast and we were like, yeah, the mild exaggeration podcast is what it's going to be. It's just reminded me of what we do and who we are.
yeah,
I feel like our daily conversation.
for sure.
Yeah.
It just worked. Like it might not make sense to people who don't know us, but it was just like, oh yeah, is there anything else better?
Mhm.
So I like it.
Mm.
So I guess I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the main themes and topics we aim to cover on our podcast, and why are they important to us?
Oh, that would be a good one, hearing everybody talk about it.
Mm.
What
Well, I
about
feel like
you start, Stephanie?
Um, so what was the question?
What are the main, well, we'll start. What are the main themes and topics you aim to cover in our podcast?
Definitely mom life and all the chaos that's in between. Also I'm leaning more toward um moms knowing that it is important for them to take time for themselves. So I don't know if I want to say like self-reflection. Also books, just life in general, just everything we really go through.
Yeah. And why are those topics important to you specifically?
Um, I guess I would have to say because those are things that I go through on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what about you, Angie?
I feel like the main topics that I do like strive to cover or post frequently on the podcast is going to be books for one, because I feel like that is like endless possibilities of what we can talk about.
Right.
And I like the fact that we all use books as not an escape, but
Hobby.
enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a hobby, enjoyment where you really are stuck in the house most of the day, anyways, with the children.
Right.
So that's something you can do. So I feel like books is going to be one of the main topics. Definitely mom life, like Stephanie said, because I feel like, well, that's something you just can't run from. So
This is
instead
who we
of,
are.
yeah, they say if you can't beat them, join them.
Exactly.
So I feel like those are the main two topics. And then I would like to talk more about like mental health, our wellness, how taking the time to, putting effort into you is going to definitely benefit overall in your daily routine of being a mom, all the responsibilities that you do have, and
Mhm.
then in result, giving you more time to do your hobbies.
Yeah, I agree to that.
Mhm.
I feel pretty much the same as you do. I mean, the main topics I want to talk about, obviously are books, just because it's something I'm interested. Like I remember the time where I was kind of reading the audiobooks without you guys, and for months I was encouraging you guys, get this book, because I felt like I was going to explode having no one to talk to like about it. So books are one, just because that's fun. I do like crocheting, so I do plan to bring that in at some point. I like to do that for fun.
That would be fun.
Being able to bring in the little hobbies where we feel like in daily life we don't have time for that, but when you make yourself a priority, it still can be fun, and you don't have to feel selfish about it. Because me personally, I went through that, taking that moment to read that book, crochet that item, or whatever it may be. I felt like I was being selfish, like I should have been focusing on something else. But realizing that your mental health is important, not only for you, but as for your family as a whole. It's important that you are in a good place.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it would be important to me, is learn to do things in the hectic life that still brings you joy.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like to help people know that they're not alone.
For sure, because that helps me
it.
out a lot. Like I used to be very heavily into podcasts and reading books. And even though, like for myself personally, I've been through plenty of times where I felt very alone in my situations. And then like come to find out, you're just like everyone else in reality. People just have different ways of go through it. Yeah.
So I do have a random question. What was, or if you remember, excuse me, what was the first podcast you ever listened to?
Like very first?
Yeah, like the moment you realized you liked podcasts.
Probably Joel Osteen.
Wow, I can't even remember.
Really?
Probably Joel Osteen, but I became very heavily into Josh Peck's podcast. So shout out to Josh Peck. You saved my life.
Yeah, I remember when you listened to it. So you can't remember it, Stephanie?
I don't remember. I know it's, like a lot of YouTube people that I used to watch, just about their daily life and stuff. And then they made like their, podcast channels and stuff. But the first one, I don't remember.
I remember my first one pretty vividly. I was 17 and I discovered podcasts.
Harry Potter.
It was like the Potterheads. And I loved it. I was totally obsessed with that podcast. Like I binged every episode. And it's like ironic enough that was my first inspiration. And now here we are making a bookish themed podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That is really cool. So I guess I don't know, a funny question that I have is, how do we handle creative differences or disagreements that arise during the planning and recording of an episode?
Oh, I know the answer for this.
Anybody want to go first?
Yes.
Go.
It's going to be me, Mandy, arguing our differences. And then Stephanie, you're always the one that's going to be the peacemaker to help us make a decision.
That's pretty accurate.
I guess on my perspective on how do we handle our creative differences or disagreements, we don't handle them. It just works itself out, just like how our relationships would be. So I think when it comes to planning and recording the episodes, too much structure never really works out. So it's kind of like just letting ourselves be ourselves, what makes it more enjoyable, I think.
Yeah. And I guess you got to think too, like three hosts on a podcast makes good sense, because we definitely need somebody to be a tiebreaker.
Which is Stephanie.
Yeah.
That's always me.
Yeah.
So that works.
I mean, it's just fun on us making our plans and, trying to get everything together for our episodes. And sometimes things don't work out like we plan to, but I don't know, we laugh through it, we get it done, and we record our episodes for you guys.
It's pretty fun.
I like it. I wouldn't have it any other way. So I do have a question that maybe kind of circles back to something we were talking about earlier, but how do I say this? Like, how do you feel like your personal story contributes, or like your personal experience shape the direction of the content of our podcast?
I don't know if I have a story. Do I have a story?
I mean, that's personal to you.
I just feel like it's just life. I don't know.
So nothing specific stands out.
I really don't think so at this moment.
Angie?
So a personal story that is significant to me in the podcast as to why we.
Right,
What was
like
the
your
question?
personal experience that kind of shaped the direction and the content of
Oh,
the Mild
yeah.
Exaggeration podcast.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like, for one, because most of our content, if it's not for books, is really, really going to be us talking about our situations, being parents, being an adult, and all your
Yeah.
responsibilities. I feel like the fact that we go through those things is what's going to be more significant in the podcast.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, it
it
makes
helps.
sense, but I guess I just kind of see that just like life in general. We just go through it. I don't know.
Mhm. You know, like our personal stories, like say my personal story as being a over 30-year-old mom with a toddler again.
That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And, you know, I feel like my story of going through that all over again would maybe bring somebody a little hope that it's not so bad.
Yeah, I like that. And I agree to that. My personal experiences really has a lot to do with my emotions, my mental state, because
Yeah.
I do tend to obviously exaggerate. Even though in the moment I don't feel like it, it feels very real. But having the relationships that I have with the both of you, and being able to talk and have different perspectives, and also feeling less alone, and feeling like when your head feels beneath the water that you can get through it, and sometimes you have to allow other people in, whether it's just to pacify that moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like me personally listening to podcasts in the past or currently has brought me to that level of understanding that your mind,
It helps.
yeah, like your mind does need, you don't need to be in your head that much.
Mhm.
It helps everyone, you know, whether it's something you're going through mentally, whether it's getting a chore done around the house and just feeling like you
Mhm.
need a moment to escape. So yeah, we're here for our listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Maybe
feel
like, you know, like I feel like maybe our personal stories, yeah, they definitely help people feel like they're not alone, number one. But I feel like the main thing is for people to understand that it's okay to have these meltdowns and
yeah,
to mildly exaggerate your situation,
yeah, for sure.
because even though it may be a minor inconvenience, it's still an emotion that you're feeling that is troubling you or making you have anxiety or making you feel stressed out. Like there is no such thing of like being just a little bit stressed out or a little bit feeling anxious. Just feeling it overall is difficult.
Yeah, and it's there. And I
Yeah.
think that's what my kind of my point is that when I listen to podcasts, it
Mhm.
helps. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I hope to deliver that to our audience.
Mhm.
Yes,
So
100%.
Mhm. So I
Just
got a
know,
question. Go ahead, Steph. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, for the ones who are listening, just know that you're not alone and we're here with you.
Yeah.
For sure. Welcome aboard. Mildly exaggerate with us.
Okay, so I got a question for you guys. How do we plan to evolve and grow with our audience? Or what plans do you foresee in our future with the podcast?
So I
Yeah.
hope to connect with our listeners.
Mhm.
I'm also in the process of building my personal social media, my Instagram. If you guys want to follow, bookmarked mom life.
Good.
And just knowing that because we're each going to have somebody who would want to just hear Mandy's perspective or
Yep. Mhm.
Angie's perspective, growing that community and just kind of us also feeling that we're not alone, but also giving that back to our listeners in return.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know if that answers your question though.
Yeah, it was good. What about you, Mandy?
I don't know. You go.
Well, what I like when I think of that question, like what do I plan to evolve and grow in, is I feel like definitely bigger than us just having our social media and a podcast. Maybe one day we could come out with a book, or we'll
Yeah.
have um, something like that nature that will help people to connect, uh, to know like, hey, we're this three normal people that is telling you it's okay what you're going through, kind of a thing. So I don't
That
know.
would be really cool.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I feel like there's something, and I feel like the podcast is just like the first step to endless possibilities of
Oh
what we
yeah.
can do with the mild exaggeration, because I feel like it's not mild exaggeration isn't just a podcast.
The lifestyle.
Yeah, there you go. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both of you, and especially, thinking about like talking about the book, and it kind of feels nostalgic to like imagine that, because
Yeah.
we're like, here, read a book, because that's what we did.
Oh, and then like when that time in our life does happen, we could come back to this episode and reflect back.
Yeah,
So
for
true.
sure. I like that. But I guess on my like context of it, to be honest, like completely vulnerably honest, I'm not really sure of
Mhm.
the the future plans or how I want it to evolve.
Mhm.
I'm mostly looking forward to connections,
Mhm.
reaching people, and not only for like their sake, but mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And, I just, like you said, making those connections and, letting others know that they're not alone in whatever situation that we go
yeah,
through in our daily life, especially as moms. And, just kind of having fun with it too, because these podcasts, they are fun to record.
They are.
yeah, they are.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess building an extended family, where we all can just laugh. That's my
Yeah.
goal. It's just to make people laugh, because for me, laughing cures my soul.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
So,
I feel like when you get to a point where you overly exaggerated a
oh yeah,
situation and then you realize and then you laugh about it, it's pretty good.
it is.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
I seen something
Oh,
somewhere where it was just like, did you laugh today? And then like the description says like everyone needs to have like one good laugh a day.
I
yeah.
guess. Like what people say, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry.
Oh yeah,
Well,
for sure. I
all
like
right. Well,
rather laugh so hard that you cry.
Oh yeah.
there you go. So I think we covered all of our questions for the birth of the mild exaggeration. Do you
Mhm.
guys want to have a small chat about the books that we are currently reading?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Who wants to go first?
Stephanie, since it's her question.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go first. I am currently reading of course, it's another Colleen Hoover book. I don't know what it is about her, but her books are just amazing, and it actually just feels like you're involved with the characters as you read the book. But I am currently reading It Ends With Us, which is
No, you're not.
It starts with
It's-
us. You're reading.
It Starts With Us. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I'm reading a few of them. I'm also listening to the Britney Spears, A Woman in Me, which is really good so far. And then, of course, I started a book club on Fable. If you guys want to check it out, it's bookmarked Mom Life. And we're currently reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah, nice.
Hope I'm saying her last name correctly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I'm reading A Court of Thorns and Roses as well on audiobook. I think I'm like 9 or 10 chapters in, and it's pretty captivating, not gonna lie. Definitely right up my alley. And another, like a physical book I'm reading is something I'm excited about because it was my first ARC read. So I got to read it before it was even released, called Rise of the Cinder Fae. So it's like a dark twist on Cinderella. So shout out to Whitney Dean for letting me ARC read her book. It actually releases this month on the 26th, so February 26th. So if you're listening before then, don't forget to pre-order because it was pretty interesting.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
Pretty cool.
only reading one thing right now, which is Colleen Hoover,
It
the
ends.
last at the end of us ends
I
with us.
know.
What?
The titles are
It
so
Ends With
confusing.
Us.
Yeah, it ends with
It
us.
ends with us. So
So
the
good.
one you're reading, is that part 2 or?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
part 2.
I'm pretty interested in that, and honestly, I want to finish it before I start something new. I'm very interested. That's all I'm reading right now.
Is it just me, or do you feel so connected to the characters and everything that happens in the book?
Yeah, I do. I feel very involved. I love when I can envision it, like when authors describe the characters so well that you can see it in your head. I like that, and like I like when I get so in tune to a book, and it's like you can actually see their body movement, their body language, and that's kind of where I'm at, and I like that.
Well, I think that's what's unique about Colleen Hoover books is that if you really take a step back and look at her stories, they are a little bit more like average stories. But it's just the words, Lloyd, it's the words that she chooses and the way she writes it that holds your attention.
Captivates you, yes.
Yeah. Because really, like the books that I've read by her so far are a little bit more, not very unique.
Right, a little predictable,
I don't know
but
how.
still captivating.
Yeah, like I don't know how far you are in the books. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah,
But it's just like once you read it, you'll see like, well, that's everyday life for a lot of women. But it's just like the way she just tells the story. I don't know. Like I just feel like Colleen Hoover for some reason, even though I'm diehard fantasy fan, when I read Colleen Hoover, that is a book that I have to smash through it in one day because I cannot sleep unless I know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
there's no
I
other.
love it.
Yeah,
I love
they're
it. I look forward to reading more of her books.
This is the first book I've ever read by Colleen Hoover, so I'm not there with you guys yet. Give me some time.
Do you remember, Mandy, when we well, maybe you didn't really pay attention. Like when we lived in Maine and we would go to, I believe it was Walmart, and we used to always go to the book section in Walmart. I remember always seeing Colleen Hoover everywhere.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah.
not specifically that time, but I do remember seeing Colleen Hoover books and, her knowing her name, essentially.
Yeah, and I feel like even back then when I wasn't that big into like the different authors, like of course, like I knew J.K. Rowling.
That was it.
Yeah. I feel like then always Colleen Hoover stood out. And then now being as old as I am now and just getting back into reading,
Mhm.
her name just like, I don't know, it's like unforgettable. It's weird.
Yeah.
Well, like even whenever you guys told me to read this book and you say Colleen Hoover, I'm just like, it sounds so familiar that I'm like, I must have read one of her books before. And I
Right?
looked up the whole list and I'm like, I did not, but why does her name seem so familiar?
Well, I mean, we guys got to think about it this way. Back when we were teenagers, these type of stories would not have been a story that I would have been interested in. Being an adult is
It's not
something,
really for teenagers. It's more
yeah,
for
adults.
adults.
Yep. So that's
I
probably why
probably
we
was
just knew.
interested in and felt bad that I was reading. There was a question I had, something about reading books. Oh, what kind of made you? I don't know about Stephanie because Stephanie never, that to my knowledge, was really into reading. But there was a point where
I never
both
was.
Angie, right, and both there was a time where both Angie and I were into reading books. I don't know if that was because we were secluded in like 30 feet of snow, because that's where a lot of it,
Mhm.
that significant time. And I think that's why you'll hear Angie reference Maine a lot, because that's what we did. And
Yep.
obviously a small town with nothing there,
Mhm.
obviously Walmart and what they call the mall that had like 3 stores. So anyway, back to my question. What made you kind of fall out of reading?
Reading
Yeah.
kids.
Because just obviously we're kind of all just getting back into it.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just now stepping into it. And I guess maybe that's because I was trapped into 30 feet of snow just recently living in Iowa.
That's how reading comes about. Trapped in snow.
Right.
But figuring why, like, the reason why I fell off the wagon and haven't read, honestly, in like a decade
Yeah.
was just my life was very hectic. Back then, 10 years ago, I had smaller children and I just didn't have time to read. And I feel
Mhm.
like maybe at that time in my life, my priorities were just different.
Yeah.
I was younger, I was figuring out just life in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason why I'm getting back into it is because I just have a little bit more flexibility with my time.
Mhm.
Life isn't as, I shouldn't say it isn't as hectic, but maybe I could handle it more maturely than I did 10 years ago.
You're a little more
So,
seasoned.
yeah. So now I could actually prioritize the time to read. Like, let's say 10 years ago, it would have been a struggle for me to get up 2 or 3 hours earlier before the kids so I could get in some reading or whatever. Now,
Right.
being older, I have no problem getting up earlier before the kids, no matter what amount of time of sleep I had. So I feel like the age allowed me to be able to start reading again, just being older.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I can agree to that as well, especially um maybe OCD is something that runs in our family. I don't know.
Mhm.
Feeling like the priorities were, that was not a part of my priority. Anything that had to do with me and like just sitting down, I would like feel guilty about it. Like I should be doing something
Mhm.
else. Um, so that was just something I felt like I didn't have time for. I felt like I didn't have the mental space for too. Like I felt like I couldn't engage in it. And this is a little I guess a little background of me and Stephanie. We used to stay on the phone, like no joke, from the moment we opened our eyes to the moment we went to bed. There was actually probably more than one time where I fell asleep
What?
with
I
Stephanie
don't
on the
remember
phone.
that.
You don't?
No.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
fell asleep, and I do remember you telling me, I don't know what happened, and I said I fell asleep. But anyway, and then that obviously becomes slightly awkward staying on the phone as a grown adult, and to the point where our husbands are saying, "Are you on the phone?" Like before they speak.
You're saying
It
just recently, like within the last couple of years, you did that?
Hello, were you not on the other end of the phone?
I don't remember that happening.
You do not remember us being on the phone morning till night.
Well, I'm saying where you fell asleep.
That happened when I where was I? I call it my spider house, but I don't think you know what house that is.
Yeah.
Because
The house
that's kind of,
went to.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that happened. But I'm talking about specifically not so much me falling asleep, but the dependency we had on each other. And I'm saying how it kind of got really out of control and awkward to the point where like we would wait on each other, be like, okay, well, if you're not available right now, I'll wait to wash my dishes until you're done.
Are you serious?
But this is the thing. It was almost kind of like that distraction of having all of these things to do and feeling overwhelmed with it, whether it was kids, cleaning, all of this kind of stuff. Very similar to listening to an audiobook, just kind
That's
of
exactly my
like
point
an
where-
escape, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. I remember though when you guys used to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we've done that as kids too, which was whatever, but as grown adults, mothers, like her background of her life, which a lot of the time we weren't really saying anything. It could be me being like, "Oh, I have a heartburn," and stuff. You're like, yeah, whatever. And like
Just
Aria,
knowing.
yeah. And then you hear the background of her kids screaming, the background of my kids screaming, and it was like comforting to have something to pay attention to rather than my own thoughts. But now I don't know what happens to me now. Now I don't like being on the phone anymore. I don't. And like the madness of children brings me anxiety, you know. Anyway, I have no idea how I got here, but it was something about me talking to Stephanie's relationship, and I replaced her with a podcast or an audiobook.
You replaced me. That's all that she's saying.
Okay.
That was the point I was getting at. I don't know how, but it's very comical if you think back. It was crazy. We even had lunch together. We even had wine sampling together.
On the phone?
Yeah.
Wine sampling.
Yeah, we went through this wine phase. You don't remember that? Stephanie,
maybe I had too much wine at the time.
Apparently, you don't remember? We would literally go out and buy wine, and then I was complaining that I had no idea that a wine bottle opener was so expensive.
Oh, is it?
For me, $7. I was like, what?
Wow.
And then we were talking about hacks. Man, Stephanie, you're really embarrassing me right now.
I don't remember. I know that we used to be on the phone a lot, but the falling asleep and the wine, I don't know. I just know that we was a part of our family's lives, like every day, all day.
You don't remember us drinking wine? And we both decided that it makes us sleepy and gives us a headache?
I mean, even I knew that, Stephanie, that you guys used to drink wine together.
I don't remember the whole wine. This is the thing. I never really was into wine too. Thanks for tuning in into today's episode of the Mild Exaggeration. Don't forget to check back every Wednesday for our weekly post. If you want to stay even more in the loop, be sure to follow our social media. Until next time, keep reading, keep laughing, and keep living your best life. We'll see you next Wednesday.